Welcome to Hacking Your ADHD. I'm your host, William Kerb, and I have ADHD. On this podcast, I dig into the tools, tactics, and best practices to help you work with your ADHD brain. And today I'm joined by Sky Waterson for our research recap series. In this series, we take a look at a single research paper, although today we're going to be looking to two, and so it's a little something different. But what we do is we try to see how the papers were conducted, try to find any practical takeaways, and discuss what's going on in these papers. So the two papers we're going to discuss today are Boredom, Proneness, and its correlation with internet addiction and internet activities and adolescence with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And our second paper then is Boredom, Proneness, and Inattention in children with and without ADHD, the mediating role of delay aversion. So lots in there, lots to discuss, and we'll get all into that. And as this is a new series, I do want to make sure that people know that I would love to hear what your thoughts about it. Feel free to go to hackingyouradhd.com/contact and leave me a note about what you think about the series. I'd love to hear about this. And I've really appreciated all the feedback I've already gotten for the series, so I'd love to hear more and make sure that I'm doing this in ways that you guys really like. Now, new episodes of Research Recap will be coming out every other Friday. And with that, let's get into this.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm really interested in this because what we're going to be looking at here is two papers. One of them, the first one you said is from 2018. And it's really, I would say, the precursor to the second paper where they go into a little bit more about why there's this correlation between boredom and ADHD and, what we can glean from it, not just what it looks like. But if we look at the first paper, the 2018 paper, it is pretty much at its core a pretty straightforward paper. They had a look at adolescents aged between 11 and 18 in Taiwan who had ADHD according to the DSM. Always love that. And then they were looking at their experiences of boredom and their experiences of internet activities. And then weirdly, they looked at like parents' marital status and a couple of other pieces as well.
Yeah, I mean, and they did find that those things were really significant in those results too, which is interesting as well. Also, I think it's just, there were a lot of kids in this study. We had 300 kids, and the one thing I kind of was like, oh, they had 86% of them were male, and so you're like, okay, that is a quite pushing to one side of that spectrum there. But I also understand that we're still catching up on getting girls diagnosed.
Exactly. And this was 2018. So, the chances that they were having that conversation is much lower at that point. They were still just like, ADHD is a thing. Yeah. We should look at it.
So yeah, I thought that it was a great study to look at with boredom because, well, first maybe we should talk about why we would want to look at a study of boredom and ADHD in general. And some of the terms that we're using here, because I remember when we talked about this a few weeks ago, I was like, yeah, we should do some papers on boredom. And you're like, boredom. Okay. But then you look at these papers like, oh, that's really interesting how this affects. Because one of the early things I was looking, I'm like, okay, well, let's look up what the definition of boredom is here. And I'm like, oh, we don't have a clinical definition of boredom. It's just something that, we're trying to work with.
Yeah.
And what I came up with here was that boredom is defined as the averse experience of frustrating one's, God, that is just terrible wording. I don't know why I left it like that, but it's just having these adverse experiences and being frustrated with trying to engage in stimulating activities and not having stimulations, and then having this, lack of stimulation in whatever you're doing, be it internal or external.
Yeah, 100%. And they said right from the beginning, it has been identified as one of the common causes of addictive substance use, substance behavior. And it's interesting it's so simple, but it makes so much sense. Like, oh yeah, if you're bored and you have chronic boredom, you're more likely to engage in addictive behavior, which is what they're looking at here. And in the next paper, they go into it in a bit more detail. And it makes sense that people who have ADHD are more likely, spoiler alert for this paper, to experience that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing, I don't think I would categorize it as a study, but it was online experimentation people are doing where putting people in boarding situations where oh, you have this device that can give you a mild shock, or you can just sit and wait in this room. And people are
Oh,
like, I don't want to
yes.
do that. And then they're just sitting there and like, well, I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. I'm going to shock myself again.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's one of the things like, yeah, we will, in a situation where we're not being stimulated, we will find ways to find stimulation, even if it's unpleasant.
Yeah. And if we have ADHD, we know that we struggle with this particularly low arousal, and that means that we can find ourselves in that unpleasant feeling a lot more. It reminds me of clients I've worked with who've I've spoken to who've said they've gotten irrationally angry in long meetings because they have to pay attention. And these are people with very professional jobs. They have to pay attention, they have to engage, but the person they're listening to is not necessarily the most interesting person. The meeting doesn't necessarily have to exist at all, and it's going on for far too long. And it can be like a very viscerally frustrating experience having that level of boredom.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to my life and many, that's like, if I see that I have to wait in line for something, the chances of me just choosing to do something else are much higher. I mean, oh, that's going to take a 5 minute wait, but that much less interesting thing has a 0 minute wait. Guess I'm going to do the 0 minute wait thing
Yeah.
just because.
I'm gonna go ahead and think that Disney makes a lot of money off us.
I did a vacation with my family there, and they have this disability service pass that you can get
Oh
that
wow.
is uh, all on their like app, and it is very similar to their like lightning lane thing, except so you
Hmm.
get the disability service, and it's mainly aimed for people with ADHD, autism, people that would have trouble late
Oh,
staying in line. It's not
yeah.
meant really for physical disabilities.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And what it does is instead of waiting in line, you like click this thing. It's like, okay, they're like, this line has a 55-minute wait. And you go, okay, and I'll sign up for this thing. And then in 55 minutes, I can like scan my thing and it'll be like, okay,
Mhm.
you've waited in line for 55 minutes, even though I didn't
Oh,
physically have to wait in line.
that's crazy. That's the most accessibility supporting thing I've ever heard of, and it's in Disneyland,
Yeah.
which I've never been to. Yeah.
It initially felt like I was like just skipping the line here because that's I'm like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
not waiting in line. I'm going over here and looking at the shop while the time
Hmm.
is going. And then
Hmm.
I'm like, but this is accessibility, like straight up.
Hmm.
Like I would
Hmm.
not wait 55 minutes to go on a ride.
Yeah.
I just tell my
Yeah.
kids, hey, we're not doing that one because there's no way we're gonna get through this.
And that one, because there's a lot of long lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh yeah, this is great
Mhm.
accessibility here.
To kind of bring it back to here in
Yeah.
terms of, saying like, oh, is this fair? Should I be allowed to do this? Well, what they actually found was that yes, when you looked at the results, people who struggled with ADHD were also more likely to struggle with internet addiction.
Hmm.
So the results of ADHD was that there was a relationship between boredom proneness in adolescents with ADHD and their risk of internet addiction, which they sort of said to mean, okay, we probably need to go ahead and evaluate, if somebody has this struggle, we should go ahead and check in and make sure they're not experiencing this problem as well, because the two are correlated.
Yeah. And I think especially with how easy it is to get on the internet now, it
Hmm.
feels like this instant cure for boredom, even though
Yeah.
it's often I mean, a lot of the times what we're doing is we're going to social media and scrolling things that we don't actually
Hmm.
find that interesting. And so then we're
Yeah.
having a worse experience, but we're still doing it because it's so
Yeah.
easy.
And it's actually something I like to talk about with clients because one of the things that seems to happen a lot is we will find ourselves in a position where we are saying, okay, I don't want to be bored, but I also don't want to be over distracted by a bunch of things. So I'm going to remove everything. So my space is very minimal. I don't have a lot of stuff, nothing to distract me except my phone. And so what ends up happening is by removing, and I say this as you've got lovely things behind you, so many cool things to do, and I have, little fidgets around me and like little retro games and things. That's actually to stop me from going on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot easier for me to do something small that I know I can stop than,
Yeah.
uh, but if I like do a activity on my phone, it's a lot easier to get drawn in and then me going like, okay, well, if I do this for 10 more minutes, then I'll have 3 minutes to finish this email that I need to write. And then
Exactly.
10 minutes later, well, if I'm sure I could do that in 1 minute. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, I've completely squandered my time that I needed for a number of things, not just that one email I was supposed to write in this half hour.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. And it's one of the reasons why sometimes the solution to that problem is on a practical level to increase the amount of things that you can do that are fun in your space, but focus on the ones that you can naturally stop. Because we sort of say, oh, well, I'll get rid of everything and then I'll just have myself. But the truth is, you have your phone. And unless you're going to do a dumb phone or something like that, you're probably going to find that is a distraction for you.
With this paper, we get to see that, the boredom proneness is, a meaningful risk factor for finding these things. And did
Yeah.
you look at the boredom proneness scale or like the questionnaire that they had for that?
No, I didn't. What did they
I found
say?
it. There's great questions. Like it starts with like, it's easy for me to concentrate on my activities. I'm like, okay, that's, there, it's like time always seems to be passing slowly. Uh, let's see what, but I think my favorite question on here was having to look at someone's home movies or travel slides bores me tremendously. Uh, and this,
That's amazing.
yeah, and typically it's on a 1 to 7 scale, although
Hmm.
specifically for this study, they listed that they did a
Yeah.
1 to 5.
Yeah. I feel like the person who wrote that had like a personal vendetta.
Yeah,
Like,
I guess I am a very boredom uh, prone based on the question, just looking through the questions, being like, yeah, I get bored real easy. Uh, although there's other things like I find it easy to entertain myself. Yeah, I
hmm.
endlessly find entertainment. But I don't know if that question points to
Yeah.
being easily bored
Boredom.
or easily.
Yeah. Easily distracted. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then in 2025, do you want to jump into that paper or is there anything else you want to say about the 2018 one?
Just the socioeconomic factors that
Hmm.
being like, yeah, if you have parents that are well involved, you're less likely to have
Yeah.
internet addiction. And
Hmm.
they did not discuss why that is, other
Hmm.
than it's fairly obvious if you're home alone, not being entertained, you will
Yeah.
find the easy solution.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so they sort of speculated on like parental involvement and parental oversight and the effects that that would have, but they didn't have too much. They had a few conversations about like maybe it was also about the ability to go outside, access to resources related to that. But it was interesting to see that they included that as well.
We should also mention that this was a lot of this was in comparison to doing online studying.
Yes. Yeah. Hmm.
And being a 2018 paper, who knew that it would be so relevant in just a couple of years?
Yes, 100%. And it was interesting to see this paper sort of from 2018, which is around about when I was sort of starting to realize I had ADHD. It was not a time when people were on the internet talking about it the way that they do now. And then fast forward to 2025, so hot off the press, we have a paper that came out looking at boredom proneness in children with and without ADHD. And this time they had a lot more firepower to bring to the conversation because since that time there was conversations about, delay aversion, what that means. They also talk about the default mode network, which we love. And they also start with the concept of boredom, which I really appreciated because clearly they've been having this problem as well. What is boredom? And they basically said it's, closely related to problems with attention regulation. It's associated with frustration. It can even trigger feelings of depression, and it's associated with increased risk of problematic eating behavior, substance use, problem gambling, as well as ADHD symptoms. So they really came in hard into this 2025 paper saying, hey, I know boredom sounds like something that you just say, like, no one should be bored. But in reality, it's quite a problem. But yeah, they talked about delay aversion as in saying, difficulty waiting is also a common problem for children with ADHD. And ironically, we literally just talked about waiting. Um, you know, the symptoms of ADHD reflect alteration in the brain's dopaminergic reward system, and the value of delayed rewards is discounted to a greater extent than normal. So we tend to face adverse consequences when confronted with delays. Anybody who's been confronted with delays will feel that on a visceral level because often those adverse consequences are viscerally feeling. And so we typically opt for immediate or less delayed options, which will affect our abilities when it comes to being bored.
Hmm. Yep. And I love that this study, compared to the previous study, I love this study had a control group to
Hmm.
compare this to, whereas last study was just looking at, hey, can we find these correlations with this? And this was like, hey, when you have ADHD, are you more likely to deal with these board system? So it had like
Exactly.
183 children, 93 with ADHD, 90 without, and then it was ages like 9 through 16.
Yeah, exactly. So this, study, they specifically said, previous research has established a robust association between boredom proneness and ADHD symptoms. But here they really wanted to look at the mechanisms of what was going on. And they used the short boredom proneness scale, which they translated into Chinese, because this is where that study
Hmm.
was conducted. And then yeah, went through some questionnaires to see what was happening. So what did they find?
Well, they did find that delay aversion is a um, key mechanism linking boredom to inattention. And then
Mm-hmm.
they, were finding that this, adds to this idea that ADHD symptoms, go beyond just having this emotional regulation. So it's adds to the idea that ADHD is more than just attention problems. It's, emotional dysregulation, it's motivation, and it is
Mm-hmm.
these delays in being averse to delays that is really driving these factors.
Exactly, and it was really nice to see all of the. In some ways, this paper is so good because it gives us this information. It also gives us a sense of how far we've come in the ADHD conversation in general, which, is really good to see. And then they also talked about the default model. They said, boredom is closely linked to the regions of the brain's default mode network. And I just wrote default model exclamation point.
Yeah.
And the researchers found that boredom-induced negative effects was associated with increased activities in the bilateral ventromedial prefrontal cortex, decreased activity in the prenucleus. And they're sort of saying here that it appears that resting state default mode network activity closely overlap those observed during the experimentally manipulated boredom conditions. So they're bringing the conversation and saying, excessive default mode network activity has been linked to attention lapses, a common feature of ADHD, as well.
I really do feel that the more we're learning about the default mode network and it's, not transferring to the task positive network is
Hmm.
something that we're going to just be seeing coming up in research over and over again, and how that this is really what's limiting our attentional regulation and is going to be something that we're I don't know if there'll be a lot we can do about that, but it is going to be
Hmm.
something where, oh, this is where we need to focus on trying to get ourselves to be have a little bit more stimulation when we're focused on what we want to be focusing on.
Yeah, yeah. That's when we need to give ourselves that boost. And for those of you who are like default mode network, well, we have talked about it. So there are papers, there are articles, podcast episodes
Yeah.
on that topic.
Yeah. And just
Okay.
just to give people a quick thing, yeah, it is the part of your brain that you use when you're not doing goal and oriented activity. And then
Hmm.
this task positive network is what you're doing with the part of your brain you're using when you are doing goal oriented activity. And
Hmm.
uh, there are indications with ADHD that you don't switch between the two very easily, and your default mode network tends to just stay active most of the time.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
daydreaming while doing
Yeah.
activity and just thinking about other things.
Yeah. And for anyone who's tried to do a task and then found themselves in tab 3 of an idea that they didn't even fully process that they were even thinking about, that's the default mode network conversation.
Yeah. So, an interesting thing I did find about this study was that the there was this heavy reliance on parental reporting on these things,
Yeah.
and they
Hmm.
found much stronger implications when parents were looking at the behaviors of their children compared to children doing their self-rating. And it's just one of these things with ADHD that I find that the severity of the symptoms are often reported based on how they're affecting other people rather than how they're
Yes.
affecting yourself.
Yes, 100%. I think that's always such an interesting conversation. And even in the conversation of diagnosis, right?
Mhm.
In order to get a diagnosis, you have to go back sometimes and find teachers' reports. And it's like, well, if your teacher didn't think that you were disrupting the class, it might be hard for us to give you a diagnosis.
Yeah, which is especially relevant with people that are inattentive.
Yes, 100%. And people who are masking really well.
Yeah, which yeah, as I was saying earlier, my kids were going back to school and asking them, "Hey, do you want to bring fidgets and stuff?" And my daughter being like, "Nope, don't want to have any of that in the class." I'm like, "Oh, because you don't want to be perceived as different."
Which I completely relate to, completely did the same thing. And it meant that I got diagnosed way later. And also it meant that, it was harder to find those things that were like, it was more like it would be great if she read the last page of the test.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh yeah, the number of tests I've gotten back where it's like, why didn't you do this problem? Oh, I didn't see it. How did you not see this whole page? I don't know."
To kind of summarize this, it really is, for those of you who are curious, there is an association between boredom and ADHD. It's very real. It is, we see it across time when we're looking at these different papers. We see that it has a significant effect on ourselves. And we're starting to see a little bit more about why that is happening as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing this with, especially with this 2050, this delay aversion is being this thing, this key indicator of like, oh, are you going to be going into these boredom things? And then if you have boredom induced, are you
Yeah.
going to be able to deal with it?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like at this point, I should probably give you guys something. So if you do DM me at Unconventional Organization and just message us boredom, we will send you like a list of examples of fidgets and fun adult friendly dopamine things that you can do. Because I do want you to go, well, that's cool, but like let's have some practical strategies. So we'll give those to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is something where you can't just rely on the what we have often heard is just focus, just
Hmm.
push through, and those are
Yeah.
really bad strategies. And
Don't push
this
through.
these studies are saying, yeah, this that won't work. You need to have
Hmm.
something to add to the stimulation so that you're not feeling
Yeah,
just mind-numbingly bored because you're just
yeah,
not going to be able to push through.
yeah. It's associated with a lot of things we don't want to be focusing on and dealing with. So don't do it. Grab that fidget. It's okay. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were just listening to a research recap. I'm Sky Waterson of Unconventional Organization. If you like that, there's lots more information about ADHD and support for you at unconventionalorganization.com. You can go ahead and check that out. Lots of free resources, lots of strategies, and if you want to join our programs, you can do that as well. And we'll see you there, Unconventional Organization.